I am joined today by the one and only Mr. Joe Mullings. How are you, sir?
I'm doing really well, and it's great to be back, my friend.
It is. And in the time that you came on the last time to this time, we got to meet face to face. I got to check out the offices, got to see the machine, got to see all the different things that you're doing in recruitment. I joke that I'm often the budget airline version of your operation, but I very much felt like that when I got in there and I saw it. Um, do you think maybe you could just, before we jump into some detailed questions, could you give me a bit of a sum up of where the business is at right now and how you're doing things a little bit different with media in case anybody didn't catch the first time that we spoke?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And it was great to have you in Charlotte here, by the way, in the office. So I always appreciate people who understand where the TA, the talent acquisition world, should go. So since our last visit, I believe we've double, tripled down on our initiatives in regards to building brand reputation. I've actually call it, so people don't get sketchy anymore. It's an awareness attention campaign. Building an awareness attention around your search practice or your desk or your specialty. So building that awareness attention campaign drives inbound business. There's no question about it. Again, our stats are probably 80 to 85%. I just got back late last night from the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference out in San Francisco. And, the signs that are showing me we're doing things right is Ernst & Young brought us in and wanted to consult with us. Deloitte brought us in and wanted to consult with us. And actually were wonderful hosts on in some of their events and really spent time with us discussing what we're doing on behalf of the healthcare industry, because it comes out in regards to pushing the industry forward, and then we receive the support and accolades and the call in business on that. So when you start to, and here's another thing, I gave the keynote to Medtronic, a $30 billion a year firm, about 60, 90 days ago. And the invite to do the keynote at Medtronic's Top 100 Supplier event stands right next to the cease and desist letter they sent me a year and a half before that, because I was recruiting out of their firm. so,
Very good.
so these are the interesting things that are occurring when you build an awareness attention campaign, a brand online, and you become a gatekeeper and a connector for your industry. So we've
So
doubled.
if somebody's
Go ahead.
to this, Joe, and like for somebody who really isn't into the detail of digital, um, how, how does digital affect a recruitment business? Like, do you like say if Ernst and Young say, "Hey, Joe, we want you to run this with us," like what does that look like? How does that happen, and how does that affect recruitment? Like, can you tie that together for us?
Sure. So what you want to do always is you obviously, the most successful search firms and individuals run usually industry specific offices or teams that are industry specific. So the way that you can demonstrate that your market is by posting content, and right now it's really LinkedIn. Although we're starting to get into Twitter right now, and we're starting to get into Instagram to build ongoing brand and awareness. But when you start to demonstrate that you know your industry, think about it from an analog perspective. People who get call-in business currently, and it's usually repeat business, get that call-in business because they know the people who they're talking to on their phone, on their little circle, right, on their very small circle of influence, know that they know their industry. And that's fantastic. When you go into social and you go into LinkedIn, and let's keep it LinkedIn for today, what you're doing is you're demonstrating your industry knowledge, your market knowledge to just a larger population of people who do not know you. And so you're just scaling that knowledge that's demonstrated through what you post, how you post, and how you entertain, infotain, and inform and give insight to those who are navigating their career. And so the person who runs an analog desk does that really well. They just have to get the courage and the discipline and put in the extra hours just to take that and then put it out on a scalable sort of digital domain so people go like, wow, Susie Smith really knows my cardboard box industry. I'm following her. She's really got some insightful thoughts. She gives me insight to where the market's going, where careers may be going, who's transacting, has an opinion on the latest cardboard box folding machine, whatever it is. Now people start to lean in, both hiring managers as well as the individuals. So you're just demonstrating your expertise at a much larger scale using either short or long form video, stills, copy, some blogs. And I've even stopped writing articles because the ROI on those articles are not as good as the 1,300 characters posted on LinkedIn.
Mm.
So it's just demonstrating your
So
expertise.
Joe, you have a big team that help you with all of this. What do you say to the 1 to 10 man band that maybe doesn't have the capital runway to do this in a slick way? How do they go about it? And like what does that look like for modern recruitment firms out there?
Yeah. So I get that question a lot. And I remind everybody that 4 or so years ago, I started with one little Sony handheld camera and a young guy out of college, and we developed content. And then I added a second person, and it was a really low budget effort. But then when I started to see the result and the inbound business that we started to get, I then said, okay, hold on a second. Let me increase this spend. For every dollar I'm spending, I'm getting 4 back. Why would I put that money into my retirement fund? Right? So I started with one camera.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing as how did that 10 desk office become a 10 desk office? It started with one. And then you decided rather than taking, and we've chatted about this before, Dualta. You either choose to pay yourself or you choose to pay your business. You can't do both. And so rather than me take that extra $50,000 that first year I did this and go buy a stupid car, I put it back into another headcount in my digital team. And then the following year, instead of the extra $300,000 I made, instead of me putting it into my bank account, I put it back into my business. And then we grew it to 4.
But how does small business work out that ROI? Because, like recruitment math, I think before we went online, we discussed that briefly in terms of set a budget, work backwards, and reverse engineer the stats that you need to do to make a placement, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you work that out in digital if you're a small business? Is there any platforms? Is there any way to make sure that that extra dollar is equating to that?
Well, ROI always determines on timeline, right? Too many people get wrapped around the axle. So here's some decisions I had to make. And my firm actually looked at me a little cross-eyed in the beginning. I was spending more on my digital assets than I was on hiring people on the recruiting floor. Because if I just continued to hire people on the recruiting floor, I would just continue to extend out an analog function firm. One phone call, one point of influence, one call, hang it up, do it again. So I had to be courageous enough, my team had to believe in me enough for me to take that money and know that I could have hired a search consultant for an 80,000 base, and he or she might have billed 200 their first year, and they might have made, $88,000, and the firm net after expenses might have made $33,000, right? But I had to look at that and go, no. If I have that spend, talk to me in 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years when we, because of our digital push, make that investment, are patient enough, but then also work our asses off for an extra, 25, 30 hours a week, to now that digital team feeds 20 recruiters as an asset. And I don't have to add to my digital team now. Now we're starting to, and you know this because you're partnering with us. Now we're aggressively adding to our floor because the digital machine's in place and they don't have to work much harder, my digital team, or get much bigger, but now they've increased the per desk average in the entire organization substantially.
After I met with you, I went and replaced my freelancer who was doing a bit of digital for us with a full-time marketing person. Best decision I've ever made.
Surprise.
When you met Gary Vee, yeah, I know. I would add another one as well when we add other divisions in the future, to be honest with you. I can see the ROI, and I'm working out the math to be able to do all of that. I'm diversing a little bit. When you met Gary Vee, you mentioned to him that it's not just feeding you, it's feeding your people. What is the digital solution that machine that you've put together and that your team looked at you and thought, he's lost his mind? What are we? Are we a movie business or are we a recruitment business? What's happening? Fast forward a few years, what does it mean for them in terms of business coming in terms of them being able to approach new clients with a different offering? How's it transformed things?
Yeah, so timely question. So it's helped them a lot, right? So to the point where, you could probably talk to my senior people, Holly, Gio, Matt, Maria, Danielle. They get accolades all the time. I love what your firm does. And keep in mind that we take our digital content and we have an individual in the office every morning that loads up everybody's inbox with suggested content to be deployed out online. And sometimes it's our own internal videos. Sometimes it's redeployment of somebody else's content. So when we think about digital, don't only think about taking videos of ourselves or pictures. It's taking information that's available in the current marketplace and then deploying that out and sharing it with the market, because most people are busy working. They're not busy scanning LinkedIn. So why wouldn't you be the aggregator of information in your industry of expertise and then just share that with your entire marketplace? So you don't need a camera person. We have a process. We have a platform called TMG Pulse. It's sort of the Huffington Post. So it's TMGPulse.com. It's the Huffington Post of the medical device industry. We have a team member who every day, every evening goes out, and I think we have 30 different news aggregators. We aggregate news from all the top industry sites. We then put it in a TMG, a Mullings Group wrapper, and then every morning that is sent out to each account executive's desk with a suggestion of 3, 4, 5 different articles that then gets sent out and white labeled around a TMG wrapper, but it's somebody else's article, totally legal, and we reference who it was originated from to do the right thing. And now people know that they can get their industry news because it connects them back to the full TMG Pulse page. They can get their industry news through our organization. So there's digital without having, when people hear digital, they think of stills or videos. I'm just talking about using a digital platform to scale your efforts other than a job posting.
Talk to me about how the traditional side of your recruitment business, people listening to this are just going to think you're a media guy, but you've got a 30-year engine under the hood. How does that work from who picks up the jobs, who fills the jobs? Can you walk me through what that process looks? Because I don't want this to be just going over people's head and just to be digital. You are an actual search firm.
Yeah, we're a search firm. So I've got to check. Let's call it 20 desks today, I think is what it is. It's give or take. I should know that, but I don't right now. And you've got my more tenured people who've been with me for 20 plus years. So Matt, I think it was just 17 or 19. Sorry, Matt, I don't know offhand. Holly, 23, 24. Gio, coming up on a decade. Maria, Danielle, et cetera, 3.5, 4 years. And obviously the people who've been here the longest are the biz dev machines because they've just been in the industry longer and they've got the contacts and they drive it hard. So historically what happens is we've got the rainmakers who work a 360 desk, and then we will go ahead and book the business. Once we book the business, we bring it in, and oftentimes we'll do one or we'll do I'm in the midst right now of 2 contracts that'll be 20, 25 person sales forces for medical device companies that I'll wrap out in 60 days. And then we'll put recruiters on it. And those recruiters on it will have access to the hiring manager, access to obviously the candidate, manage the process, drive the process. And for the most part, other than booking the actual business itself, my recruiters are 360. So, the only thing they're not doing is booking the business. But on the flip side, I've got a young lady, Diana, in my firm who we took out to her first conference in San Francisco in December. And she just locked up a 3-position retainer with a client because she was there. And I think some of that was due to her skills, some of that was due to her tenacity, some of that was due to the company brand that even new recruiters get to immediately leverage out in the domain they work in. I hope that helps.
How are those recruiters getting these jobs now?
What's that?
What's their go-to-market process in terms of filling those jobs?
So we have a kickoff call with every client, and that person will sit in there. Typically, there's 2 to 3 people on that kickoff call. The person who booked the JO, the Rainmaker, and then probably the recruiter or 2, depending on how many we're working on. We'll have an intake call. Immediately after that, we have an asset in the office that develops a landing page that we call position briefs. And those are an interactive landing page that is the position description, a description of using video that's publicly online. This is another digital asset you can do yourself, and videos online. Because what we do is when we highlight a JO, a job order, we highlight 4 things. We highlight the market itself and why you would want to tie your career to that market. Then we go down to the product or service. Then we go down to the leadership, and then we go down to the mission. And in that position brief, that is a digital landing page that our internal web resource develops for every single one. He made a template. That gets deployed immediately into the position description that will be put on LinkedIn. Now, our LinkedIn job postings work incredibly well. Why? Because we're spending time building brand and value to the marketplace in general. Where I hear people bitching and moaning about postings on LinkedIn don't work anymore. No, they work, but they don't work unless you work a reason for people to come find and seek out your brand. So then that'll get posted, a target list will get put together by the search team, and then we start our outbound campaign, with InMails, LinkedIn, and then targeted phone calls. Years ago, I would say 80% of our effort were invasive phone calls. I would say that's dropped down quite a bit. You walk through our office, it's a pretty quiet office for a search firm.
Are they scheduled phone calls now?
Yeah, a majority of them are scheduled calls. I would say probably 60 to 70% of our calls are scheduled calls.
When did that change?
As we transitioned into this digital play, because you've got about 80%, 70 to 80% inbound engagement on our postings, or when we send an email out and reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, Sally, we've got this opportunity in Boston. Are you interested?" Sally looks at it, looks at the position brief, which is incredibly robust information, because people are lazy. They won't do the homework themselves. So most of the time, most search firms just send out, a cut and paste of the job posting that the client gave you and, put your firm name on top of it and say, go at it. Nobody reads those anymore. So that's why we came up with a position brief that is a multimedia experience that maybe somebody grabs their tea in the morning before they start work, or on the weekend. They're like, oh shit, these are 3 nice videos. There's 2 good LinkedIn on who I'm going to be working for profiles, and there's a position description. And the Mullings Group then gave me background information on that interventional radiology robotic market and what the hyper growth has been. I'll take that call. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Let's talk about that call. What type of stuff are the recruiters getting out of that call so they can make a proper brief?
Oh, our candidate data sheet, we go deep right away. How much are you making? Why are you looking? How long you been there? Here's the 4 needs of the job position. Match your experience up to these 4 needs. These are not soft, squishy. Tell me about your weekend football game. Let's align and no. We go in hard, deep right away. We don't want to waste anybody's time. We'll walk out of that candidate data sheet with Why did you leave your last job, your job before that? We'll walk out of that with money. We'll walk out of that with personal information that people want to share with us. We may walk out of there highly likely with what your house is worth and what your mortgage is on it, and will you reload, and where will you reload to?
Asking difficult questions.
No, asking questions, if you position them properly, respectfully, and explain to the person that you're asking the questions to why the answer is valuable to them in order to make sure we're not wasting their time in the process, we've got a relatively high level of compliance and collaboration on those. So they aren't hard questions, they're the real questions.
What does that document look like that you're sending to a client?
So it's called a CDS, an internal CDS, a candidate data sheet. Most of the people here, it's a freestyle on the email, but it has a very deliberate structure to it that we've developed in-house. We are in the midst of making that a little more formal with we've got a very major investment going on right now with a custom software platform that we refuse to buy anything that's out in the market today. So we're embedding that into our new software that is being developed exclusively for our firm.
How does that next stage work? But in terms of how those resumes are presented to the client, is there anything particular that you've developed?
Nothing special. So we typically will take the candidate data sheet in the email. We will have the candidate's resume, and we'll have our opinion on where the gaps are and where the strengths are. And typically we try and send in 2, if we're lucky, 3 for the first slate. We never send in more than 3 because you're basically throwing somebody out the door. Nobody looks at 4 resumes anymore unless it's a sales role. 2 to 3 are the ideal. And then we typically within hopefully 24 to 48 hours get response back, quick feedback. We respect the hiring manager's time. We're in and out with a 5-minute debrief.
Okay. All right. And then you sail off to the sunset and spend the money and...
Oh, I wish it was that easy. You kidding me? You mentioned something earlier, and I said it was a timely question. I don't want to miss this. So while search firms are constantly looking to grow revenue, and we should, right? Because it's good for our customers if we remain in business. In 2020, we're doing 2 additional things, 2 major services we're deploying this year. One is, for years and years, I've wanted to get into the contract business. I think it's a very interesting, clever, and a recurring revenue business. But historically, it's been a process-heavy business, and also something I didn't have a real core competency in managing the back end of the business. Having said that, though, 60 to 70% of our business are emerging tech startups. And so a lot of those emerging tech startups will be hiring anywhere from 1 to 4 people that probably should be $300,000 to $400,000 a year American, but they can't afford them, so they end up hiring them part-time. And usually it might be a finance person or a quality or regulatory person, what have you. So we were never even getting part of that business before. And again, that's recurring revenue. So we are launching TMG Contractor, where we're going to start offering services for contractors to the medtech startup clients. And I'm excited about that in itself, but what I'm more excited about is, because of our brand, there are all of these lost souls out in the contracting world that are career contractors. And they don't have an agent, right? They're typically, if you know anything about the business, are feast or famine. And they're terrible at marketing themselves, and they're terrible at re-engaging at the end, or sometimes they don't even know when the end of the contract's coming, but they sure as hell are not salespeople. So we are creating TMG Contracts specifically for the healthcare industry, where we are going to provide a back-end service to the individuals, the candidates, where they're going to come in and they know we're connected to everybody in the medtech industry already. We're going to say, listen, come on in, fill out this back end, tell us when you're available, when you want to work, where you want to work, what your expertise is. We're obviously going to vet it, and we're going to reference you. But then what we're going to do is we're going to get you in queue, so as these opportunities start to come up, We can match them with this custom software we're building up against what clients' needs are. And we
How
now,
many verticals
what,
will you go for?
what's that?
How many verticals will you go for? Like how many different job titles?
In medtech, everything across the board: quality reg, clin, sales, marketing, business development. Every vertical we work in the full time. We're going to go for all those verticals.
How will you get the data of all those people?
How well? You ready for this? So I'm going to charge each of those people an annual subscription fee,
Okay.
and let's
All
just
right.
put a placeholder in there. Let's call it
You're putting it on the head there.
let's call it $1,000. So I'm going to be incredibly conservative on what that market size is, but I have an idea it'll be somewhere between 500 and 800 contractors that will pay that 1,000 for first look and exposure via the TMG machine to the contracting opportunities. And we'll also be giving them marketing insights as to how they can market themselves and how they make themselves more visible, even if they don't use us or don't count on us exclusively online, on how to grow their profile. That education alone, and these people are anywhere from 100 to 400 bucks an hour. So just if, let's say I get 700 or 800 at $1,000 subscription a year, there's a revenue stream for you. That's a nice little revenue stream coming into the organization.
It sounds like a nice project. It also sounds like a lot of work. How how does the implementation of this look like from you internally? Do you foresee them uploading their stuff directly, and then you have recruiters curating it? Like what does that look like? Because it's a lot of people to engage, to upload, to qualify, to get right, and you're dealing against other, like all the other agents calling them for gigs all the time.
Well, okay. So let's look at this. I don't know if you're a Man City or a Man United fan or either one.
Yeah, man, you, man.
So, you could play for Billy Bob's soccer team or football team if you're in the UK, or Man U gives you a call,
Yeah,
right? So which camp are you going to go to, right? So, I mean, that's a little bit of an obscene, comparison. But
I get it.
my point is if we, like we have in our industry, in the medtech industry, and this goes for anybody who masters an industry, if we've established this platinum brand and this connection with everybody, and this is why we get so much inbound, Dualta, because we are connecting ourselves as the gateway to the medtech industry. But we've only done it for full-time employees over our 3 decades. Now we're doing it for people who choose to, or maybe are in a contract position because of what's happened in their life. So they're going to want to lean in. We're building a custom software back end. I can do this analog and, to your point, have it require a lot of lifting. But even if it was pure analog, because I don't want to dismiss this from anybody who says, wow, that's a great idea, I'd love to do it. If you
Yeah.
dominate your industry and you can get a subscription model, let's be conservative, of 500 people at $1,000 a head, but you're offering them more than just, you have to offer them value for their careers beyond just, hey, I'll call you when I have an opening. And then you get that content where it's, again, digitally scalable.
Yeah.
Right? I could probably hire somebody for $150,000 or 2 people for $150,000 cumulative a year, $75,000 each with incentives. And that 1,000 a head per year, if there's 500 of them, is only the subscription. That's not my 18 to 25% margins I'm keeping on my spread while they're out in market.
Yeah. I know a good automated software that can help you do the management process of that. I'll hook you up with somebody over there after this.
Yeah.
And question for you, and where my brain's working as you're talking. You're charging them at the front door. Are you charging them at the back door as well in terms of margin, or is that going to be your sales point that you're saying, like, right now, pay me the money, I'll market you properly, you'll get the job? Whereas a traditional contract goes, like, say Robert Half, for example, says, I'm going to take 30% of your money in a margin. Here's the job, take it or leave it. Don't like it, get lost. Are you taking the margin on the back end as well, or is that something you're working into the cost that you're charging on the front end?
my back end is not going to be affected by my front end. My philosophy is I'm going to create so much value for you. You're going to want to send me that $1,000 check once a year in order to belong to the education platform I'm building. That's the key. Is in search, in talent acquisition, if your first mindset is one of which anything other than building an education platform, you're going to get crushed eventually. I always believe is create the value in the marketplace first, then execute on sales. It's a little bit of a longer timeline. There's a lot more risk exposure for sure. But if you manage your risk appropriately and you continue to build value first, then when you execute on the sales play, people are happy to give you the money.
But you don't think that 1,000 over a calendar year, if you took that out of what the agreed margin amount is, this would be a no-brainer because
it's a no-brainer either way.
They would.
It's a no-brainer either way.
All right.
If I've got Carl busting my balls about $1,000 when I've given him $30,000 worth of value in education. Now, whether he executes on it or not is a different subject. I'm going to have bigger problems trying to close Carl on his 110 versus $112 an hour. I don't even want Carl in. If Carl doesn't see the $1,000 value in what we're giving him, he's probably not the individual that is appropriate to work with our firm.
No, that all makes sense. All right, take me. If you could do it all over again, and you were starting tomorrow, what type of things would you look to do? Day one.
I'd open up in a bigger metropolitan area because
it would be a lot easier to be good for you if you did.
Yeah, so that'd be one, right? So that would be, but this is where we are, and so we do what we do. By the way, as you know, we're looking brick and mortar up in the Northeast. Hopefully, in the next 12 to 18 months, opening up in New York City. Hopefully, opening up in Boston. So if you're a recruiter right now and you're in New York City, you're a recruiter right now working for somebody in Boston, or if you're anywhere else around the country and you're a kick-ass biller and you're 5 to 8 years in your career and you want to do this for a living, and the firm you're working for right now is not giving you the tools, is not progressive, call up Dualta and Charlotte and talk to them, because we are opening up brick and mortar and we're willing to take partnerships on. But let me answer the rest of that question for you. That's my little public service announcement. So
I'm going to have that cut. Don't worry.
So there's not much I would have done different, because going through all we did and all the decisions we made got us to where we are today. I probably would have, the one thing I would have done was probably paid salaries earlier to get better athletes earlier. I grew up in the time where it was beer and cigarette money. It was a $24K draw, $24,000 a year draw, $2,000 a month. And, you were on your, escalating commission program. And I went through a lot of challenges, and I ended up getting great people nonetheless. But I would probably pay salaries earlier. And I would probably have spent more time out in the field at conferences with insane intention on face-to-face. The early parts, the first 10, 15 years of my career, I never got out of the office. I thought being chained to my desk, making those calls was key. And I might have been right. I might not be in the business today if I spent more time outside. But those are the two things I believe I would have done slightly different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Location and more face time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. What common mistakes are you seeing out there? Recruiters call you up for advice all the time. What are they struggling with out there?
The excuse why they can't afford to do a social strategy or an awareness attention strategy. There's always an excuse. I don't have the money. I don't know how to do it. I don't have the tools. You don't even need a camera. As I mentioned earlier, a digital launch. If you just think about being the news aggregator and getting value out in the marketplace, so that's one is coming up with a half a dozen excuses. And then the second is spending too much time learning how to be a recruiter on the recruiter boards. If you're a really good recruiter, you're not on those boards in the first place, and I hate to say that because you're busy,
I left. Yeah.
right? So
I,
so that's one.
I find myself wasting time there. They fell into two brackets for me. There were bluffers who were pretending they were doing stuff, and they would just spend all their time sending me private messages asking me questions. And then there was just guys in there bragging about their how much money they were billing, but they hadn't really scaled any operations. And I started getting very little value. And if anything, it just, yeah, I'm glad I'm out of them. But there's some cool people in there, hey?
Oh, listen, I'm not saying I'm saying if you want to learn the recruiting business, don't go to those boards. Right? And that's where I see is these poor souls who get a year into the business, 2 years into the business and go there. There's nothing but venom on there. It's not even collaborative, or it's somebody takes a big, massive shit on somebody else's idea. I saw one yesterday on a recruiting board, an argument between whether Bruce Springsteen was a good artist or not versus somebody else. And I'm like, we're spending time discussing this. Meanwhile, you claim you don't have time to, post value online for people in your industry. So, that concerns me. Is if you're a newbie, go get some good experience at a great firm. Go to
Let me ask you just a question on
yeah.
that. I think that's an interesting one. There's a podcast I listened to called The Tropical MBA, and they said that if they were young guys again in their 20s, would you work for somebody to learn off them, or would you take a high-paying job? Um, what would you do if you were starting all over again?
Oh shit! I would pay to work for somebody. How's that? I mean, if you could sit at the feet of a master who really understood the industry that we're moving into, not the one that's in the rearview mirror. And I have mad respect for the industry in the rearview mirror, but that's where it should remain. I would look for, and I don't know many, so don't ask me after I answer this question. I would go to work for a firm that is doing it the way that it should be moving forward, is dominant in a specific vertical, is totally committed to the digital marketplace. And the quickest way to do an inventory on that is go scope that company's LinkedIn page. So that gives you instant insight as to cadence, frequency, quality, all of those. Look, I'm going to do a shout out here to a dear friend who I love to death, and he inherited an organization that used to be one of the best in the industry. And luckily he came along, but Management Recruiters International, I love the organization. In fact, we're reconnected with it. That's how much belief I have in the organization. Bert Miller is the new president, CEO, and owner. As I said, I grew up in that business. That organization was not properly tended to beachfront property. And Bert's come in there, and when he bought it, I immediately went to the LinkedIn page because I lost touch with the organization, and it was just woeful on what they were not putting out as well as what they were putting out. And since Bert's been there for the last couple months, it's been a major turnaround. And so if I was a brand new recruiter getting into, and you backed me into this answer and I'm thankful for it, if I'm a brand new recruiter getting into this business, I would look for a management recruiter's office that had a very strong, and there's about a dozen of them out there, strong digital footprint, and go to those owners. And I say MRI because I believe they have one of the best recruiting curriculums, like purebred recruiting curriculums in the industry. And a couple of the owners get digital and are doing a reasonably solid job at it. So that's what I would do if I was in the industry. And don't worry about what your commission rate is. It's going to be the same as everybody else's. Everybody claims to have a great one, but it's all the same. A biller makes the same money, and a big firm. It's if you're a shit biller, you're not going to make as much money. But if you're a biller, you're going to do well.
What did you get out of your partnership with Gary Vee? Walk me through what that experience was like. I was kind of a bit jealous seeing that.
So, Gary. The initial meeting with Gary was when I did the 4Ds, the program they have, which was valuable. But you've got to go into that already with a little inertia. on a digital campaign. But that content, Nick Dio runs that. Nick's fantastic. Big shout out to Nick. So, that session itself, I brought up at that point in time my social guy, and he sat through that meeting with me. I think at that time it was $10,000 a seat for the day and a half or so. And then Gary and I hit it off. Sometimes you can look across a room and see another, apex predator. And subsequently after that, I've been up with Gary a number of times, one-on-ones, talking about the business, talking about what we should be doing, him giving insight as to, how it should be done. He's as sincere and genuine as you hear him or you see him online. I was really questionable at that. I'm like, nobody can legitimately be that fucking smart and have that mental clock speed and not listen to some of the people's quote-unquote business ideas and not roll your eyes subconsciously somehow. But I'm going to tell you, probably one of the most purest, generous, intellectual in his business people I've ever met. He sincerely cares about that person who's going to sell T-shirts that smell like cat piss and are going to fall apart in the first wash, and he won't disrespect your idea. He'll tell you why it's going to fail, but he won't disrespect it. Probably one of the most generous business guys I've been around legitimately, and especially when some people who blow ideas by him have no right to even be chatting with him. Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, that was I'm really happy to hear that, because you hear different things from people, and I really enjoy listening to the podcast.
Firsthand. I'm telling you firsthand, multiple meetings, one-on-ones, sitting in rooms with people asking them questions that are absolutely insane business, have no right doing it. And he will sit there and take his time and talk through it with somebody. It changed the way I think I interacted with people, believe it or not, at the age of 57.
Really?
Yeah.
In what way? Like how would you catch yourself and adjust?
He just was listening to that person without judging them as they went through, and then he would ask some very succinct questions and help that person unwind the faults in their proposed business plan. But he didn't do it. There's like those MBA douchebags who think they're smarter than everybody in the room, but maybe they are or not, but it's due to insecurity. I think Vee knows he's smarter than everybody in the room in this domain of expertise he has, but what he wants to do is help teach and empower versus catch, right? There's a big difference.
The simplicity of his answers are usually, I think that's his secret sauce. Like he dumbs down the outcome that you need to do. And I always think, to be able to explain that on the hop is really his secret, eh?
Yeah, I agree.
Let's finish up, Joe, by talking about what lies ahead. What's your vision? I feel like things have moved on a lot since the last time we spoke. Your digital platform, your ideas for bricks and mortar, where's the business going to go over the next few years? You seem to be very convicted. Like you have a conviction of I can see a real roadmap here, maybe even more so than the last time we spoke.
So multiple products that we believe help the talent acquisition field moving forward, or actually creating what it looks like. So obviously our full-time search, which is still, my baby. The TMG Contract, so now expanding that out in the contracting business and now being able to get revenue from both the clients, partners, and also the individuals, but also giving them great value. The media side, TMG Pulse, so we're continue to blow out that Huffington Post model for our vertical industry. Anybody can do that. That's got its own leadership ownership. We've started, as you know, Dragonfly Productions, Dragonfly Stories is our production company. That continues to grow out. We've just now finishing up our own. When you were here, you saw the in-house studio. I don't remember. I took you over to the other studio, didn't I? Did I take you over to the other one, or did we not make it? I think we ran out of time.
On the one floor.
Yeah. Okay. So so we're finishing up. We're building out a full studio there, and now we've got Dualta. We've got clients coming in, and I was at J.P. Morgan, and I've got 3 clients we secured there. We have clients coming to us now, up and above paying recruiting. So not even doing recruiting for them, developing their content, their awareness attention campaign around their organizations. And they're flying us out with our team, and we're helping build their hiring narrative messaging, not their product messaging, not their branding for their product, but developing their hiring narrative messaging to the industry, both LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. So that's on its way. And we're getting double duty out of our production team that way. So we're going that way. And what we're trying to do is be an entire talent acquisition solution for every aspect of the workflow on the front end, especially on the front end of how do I have you lean into my client? Is it my messaging? Is it their messaging? How do I reduce the friction? How do I let you lean in and remain anonymous? So all of that, we're moving heavily into that, using obviously media as well as old school recruiting tactics, and we're also going to be doing that, as you pointed out, brick and mortar elsewhere. We believe it's going to be New York. We believe it's going to be Boston. Eventually we're going to have to end up out in the California area, but I don't think I need that distraction right now. But well, our goal is to take this to probably a $50 to $100 million a year firm on top line revenue in the next 3 to 4 years.
Excellent. Okay. Any message for anybody who's listening that you'd like to finish up on?
Oh gosh, if you love the business, just continue to drive and do embrace the new ways that people in general are communicating. Don't even apply it to recruiting. Just look at how the rest of the world is communicating, and then ask yourself, why are you not communicating like that in your work life? I always offer it. I'm here. Reach out to me. I answer, and there's a number of people who could chime in on this, nearly every inquiry that comes into me in the business, especially the search business. So certainly feel free to do that. And if you're interested in working with a firm like ours, reach out to Dualta and his team, because we are looking.